He was walking alone, unnoticed. No cameras, no flashing lights, no security around him, just a man in a simple hoodie blending into the busy street. No one could tell that under that hood walked Cristiano Ronaldo. The street was alive with noise, vendors calling out, cars honking, people rushing past. But through all that chaos, his eyes stopped on one thing, a girl, no older than 10, standing at the corner. By her feet, a small wooden box, filled with torn, broken shoes. Shoes with ripped laces, soles coming apart, shoes no one would ever want. And yet, the girl tried. She stood there with a quiet determination, offering them to strangers who only shook their heads and walked away. Ronaldo slowed down. He couldn't look away. Something about the girl, about those shoes, carried a weight heavier than her small shoulders should ever bear, and in that moment a question formed. What could possibly connect the world's biggest football star with the smallest girl on the street, holding nothing but broken shoes in her hands? The answer was about to change everything. The man finally stopped walking. He stood a few steps away, just watching the girl. The girl's voice was soft, almost breaking as she called out, "Shoes! Anyone needs shoes?" Most people ignored her, some glanced, then turned away. But Ronaldo didn't. He bent down, eyes meeting the girl's. "Why are you selling these?" he asked gently. The girl hesitated. Her fingers tightened around one of the broken shoes. "My mother. She's sick. I have to buy her medicine. We don't have anything else to sell. Only these." The words were simple, but they carried a weight far too heavy for a child's voice, and in that moment, Ronaldo wasn't standing in the present anymore. He was back in Madeira, a small boy himself, with nothing in his stomach but hunger. Nights when food was so little, his mother would pretend she had already eaten, just so her children wouldn't go without. The image of his mother's tired face, her hands working day and night, flashed before him, the sacrifices, the silent tears, the strength that raised him when the world gave nothing. He blinked, and the street came back into focus. The girl still stood there, clutching torn shoes just as young Ronaldo once clutched worn-out football boots, holes at the toes. Dreams larger than life. Another layer of truth slipped from the girl's lips. "My father. He used to fix shoes. But he's gone now. So I'm trying to do what he did." The silence that followed was heavy, and with it, another memory struck Ronaldo. The nights when his own father wasn't there for him, when his mother's love was the only shield against despair. The echo of football on the streets, playing with friends, dreaming of escape. Every flashback cut deeper. Every word from the girl was a mirror to the life Ronaldo once lived. And as the girl lowered her head, ashamed of her broken box of shoes, Ronaldo felt his own eyes burn. Because he wasn't just looking at a girl, he was looking at himself. Years ago, the girl's small voice had drawn a few heads already. Curiosity pulled strangers closer. Some whispered, recognizing Ronaldo beneath the hood. Others just watched the strange scene. A football legend crouched beside a poor child with broken shoes. A man in a sharp suit pushed through the crowd. His watch glittered. His shoes polished, his tone sharp. He looked down at the girl's box and let out a short, cruel laugh. "Selling garbage on the street now? Who would buy this junk? Get out of the way." The girl froze, her lips pressed together, trying to be strong. But her eyes filled. Still, she managed to whisper, "Please, sir. I only need enough for my mother's medicine." The businessman scoffed louder this time, making sure others heard. "Medicine? With these? You're wasting everyone's time. Go beg somewhere else." A few in the crowd shook their heads in disapproval. Some murmured in pity, but the girl's hands trembled as she clutched a pair of torn shoes, tighter against her chest. Her voice broke now, trembling like the child she was. I just want to save my mother." The words cut through the noise. The crowd went silent for a beat. The air grew heavier. The businessman rolled his eyes, muttering something under his breath. But before he could speak again, Ronaldo straightened. His presence alone shifted the air. He looked at the man, calm, steady, then at the girl. "Sometimes," he said softly, his voice carrying further than the shout before, "silence is the loudest answer." The crowd stilled, Even the arrogant man found himself at a loss, his smirk fading into something awkward. But the girl was shaking now. Tears finally slipped down her cheeks, not from weakness, but from the unbearable weight of being mocked while trying to be strong. She lowered her head, hiding her face behind the broken shoes. Ronaldo knelt again, gently lifting the girl's chin. The world around them blurred. The cameras, the whispers, the man in the suit, they all faded. It was just one man and one girl, connected by a truth no one else could fully understand. And the tension in the air, stretched, holding the crowd on edge, waiting, wondering what would happen next. Ronaldo stayed crouched for a long moment, his hand still steady under the girl's chin. The silence in the street was heavy, the kind that makes every heartbeat sound louder. Then, slowly, Ronaldo reached for one of the torn shoes from the box. He turned it over in his hands, the sole nearly falling apart, the fabric worn thin. It was useless, worthless, and yet he looked at it as though it was treasure. The crowd leaned in. The businessman scoffed under his breath, but even he couldn't hide his curiosity. Ronaldo finally spoke, his voice calm, deliberate. "How much for these?" The girl blinked, confused. Sir, they're not worth anything." Ronaldo nodded. "Then give me your price." The girl hesitated as though afraid to say the number. "Just enough for medicine." For a moment, Ronaldo didn't move. He let the weight of those words sink into everyone around them. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. Not just a note, but a small stack, more than the girl had ever seen in her life. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The businessman's smirk dropped completely. Ronaldo placed the money into the girl's small hands, folding them gently over it. "I'll take the shoes," he said softly. The girl's lip trembled. She looked down at the torn shoes, then back at Ronaldo. But before she could protest, Ronaldo added quietly, "And tomorrow, your mother will have the medicine she needs." "That's my promise," the girl broke. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched the money to her chest. The crowd, stunned into silence, watched in awe. And then, slowly, almost hesitantly, one person began to clap. Another followed, until the sound of hands meeting echoed across the street. Some raised their phones, capturing the moment. Others just stood frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. Ronaldo gently set the shoes back into the girl's box. "I don't need to keep these," he said, his words carrying like a whisper through the crowd. "Because true wealth is not measured by what we keep, but by what we give." The clapping stopped for a beat, as if the line itself needed space to sink in, and then it returned, louder, longer, filled with something more than admiration, respect. The girl could no longer hold it in. With the money still trembling in her small hands, she dropped the torn shoe and threw her arms around Ronaldo. Tears soaked into the footballer's hoodie as the child whispered, broken, but grateful, "Thank you. Thank you for saving my mother." The crowd around them stood silent, some covering their mouths, some with eyes wet, holding their breath as though afraid to break the moment. The arrogant businessman quietly stepped back, his head lowered, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Time seemed to stop there in that street. And then, slowly, the applause returned. Not loud, not wild, but steady, respectful, filled with something deeper than admiration. Phones captured the embrace. Strangers whispered to each other, their voices shaky with emotion. Yet in the middle of all that, Ronaldo stayed quiet, holding the girl until she stopped trembling. The scene shifted. A glimpse of days later, the girl's mother lying in a hospital bed, color returning to her cheeks as medicine worked through her veins. The girl at her side holding her hand, smiling for the first time in a long while. The future had changed, and it began with a pair of broken shoes and one act of kindness. As the vision faded, the voice carried over, slow, deep, deliberate. Fame fades. Wealth fades, but kindness stays forever. The camera returned to the street. Ronaldo stood, pulling his hood back over his head. No smile for the cameras. No gesture for the crowd. He simply turned and walked away into the busy street. No spotlight followed him, only the silence he left behind, and the echo of a moment no one there would ever forget.